know she's a perfect 10. And I'm hanging on tight till the whole thing ends. 'Cause New York's sky don't get much brighter.
Welcome back to the Stockwell Eldridge Show. Asher, Victoria, and Genevieve, my kids and my wife Katie, if you're listening, you probably want me to not talk and let that song play out. And you can have a dance fest like they always do in the kitchen. But,
yeah, it's a good song.
It's a great song. So, folks, it's the Stockwell Eldridge Show every Sunday, 10 a.m. here on The Patriot. You can check us out on YouTube. And we have Stephanie Havel with Wells Fargo in studio.
Good morning. Glad to be back.
And we have David Arbit in studio with the Minneapolis Association of Realtors. And if you're, this is a show for people who are looking to and want some data on, hey, I'm thinking of selling. What's it look like now? What has this year been like? What's this fall maybe going to look like? Wait, any ideas for next year? I mean, all these things, I know they're up in the air and we don't have a crystal ball, but we can maybe take the data from the past and see what's happening. Also on the recovery, I know pre-show David and I were talking about the recovery and how some people think that we're still have some time to go before we get to inflation-adjusted recovery. So I'll let David chat about some of the loads of things we've just went over about cities that are great, some cities that there might be opportunities, and then also about the recovery situation.
Well, and tell us again.
And inventory.
Tell us again, what was the website? Was it that the average the people listeners here today can find out this information at?
Yeah, go to mplsrealtor.com. So just like shorthand for Minneapolis, Mary, Paul, Linda, Sally, and it's realtor.com. That's O-R. So go to mplsrealtor.com, and you guys will see a whole bunch of little icons at the top, and it's called we call it our Today in the Market section. So if you just click on local market updates, you'll immediately be shown a map of the Twin Cities, and you can hop into whatever community, wherever you live or wherever you're looking to buy into or sell out of or what have you. And you'll see all the counties. So just click on Hennepin or Scott or Dakota or Ramsey or Anoka County, and then you'll just kind of click on your city. Some cities like Minneapolis and St. Paul, being as special as they are, they have sort of sub-municipal geographies, neighborhoods. Actually, within Minneapolis, you have the Southwest community. Within the Southwest community, you have the Linden Hills neighborhood. Yep. So we kind of use this sort of nested geography methodology, for lack of a better word. And Jason knows, I mean, what happens in Minneapolis is not necessarily what happens in Southwest and vice versa. And what happens in Linden Hills may be, but may not always be indicative of what's happening in the entire Southwest
Higher
community.
Density in all these communities.
Exactly.
Well, it's good stuff to talk about with your neighbors. I mean, like I said, take pride in your city and what's going on and what's moving in, what's moving out, and everything like that. So I think
just to clarify, so even if you're in St. Paul, if you're a St. Paul resident or an Eagan resident right here in Eagan, or if you're a Woodbury resident or anything like that, the Minneapolis Association of Realtors has statistics for all of those, even though there is a St. Paul association.
Yeah, and they have good stats too. So you could also do.
Are they the same? Just out of curiosity. I mean, you guys share data, or is it?
So it all comes from RMLS. So it's all North Star data, but theirs is kind of branded to them. And if they have any, idiosyncrasies, the way they count some things or contingencies, so there could be some differences. But overall, they are the same. So it doesn't really matter where you go. I like to think the MPLS Realtor website's a little bit more robust and kind of showcases a little bit more information. But both of the organizations are really terrific.
Well,
so
plus they have you, so there's a little bit of a competitive edge.
I didn't want to say it, but it's kind of true.
Okay. Yeah, so share us with what you got over there. I know you've been kind of researching over there on the computer and pulling up some information.
I'm pulling up some good charts. So inventory is a sticking point. It's very low right now. And that's kind of becoming problematic for a couple reasons. So I'll just kind of start pretty high level with some of our indicators. We were seeing seller activity showing some signs of recovery, maybe a plus 1 or 2% gain over the same month of the year prior. And we kind of thought this was going to lead into this turnaround in seller activity where sellers were going to kind of get off the fence and get to boogieing down on the dance floor, as we sometimes like to say. It's data. You got to make it somewhat fun. Otherwise...
It sounds sexy, right?
Yeah, you got to make it sound sexy. Otherwise, what are we doing here? So, some are kind of thinking that might be a little bit of a head fake. Seller activity did recover in 2013 after the Great Recession and the downturn. And, everything, sales prices kind of hit their valley in about... somewhere between 2010 and 2012, seller activity started to recover in 2013, but it's really flatlined since then. So we've had 4 years of relatively flat levels of seller activity. And what's been happening with buyers? They've been doing nothing but putting up higher and
They've
higher
been
numbers.
going up.
Up and up and
Yeah.
up. So more buyers, and what are they motivated by? Low rates, right? I think the 30-year fixed is 4.1. I think it touched 4.3% after the election, kind of came back down to 4.0. I think now we're at about 4.08 or 4.125 or so, maybe 4 1/8. And so, depending on credit score and FHA versus conventional, all these things matter. But buyers are really, really motivated. They've also seen some job growth, right? We've had the longest stretch of private sector job growth ever on record.
Really?
Ever on record.
Wow.
Ever. We've had some wage growth too. This has sort of been not as robust as most economists were forecasting, and certainly as most real estate professionals or anyone in retail, that depends on consumer spending would like. But we have had some wage growth, so consumers are feeling better. You think about the Great Recession, maybe two working parents in a household. Some of those households were down to one parent, one working parent. Now they're back to two, so incomes are a little bit better. Consumers are they're not really feeling the financial pinch like they were, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So buyer activity is as high as it's been almost ever. I think 2016 we had our second highest level, and we only fell behind 06, and we weren't that far behind.
And 06 was booming.
That was the peak of the bubble.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the peak of the boom. That was the absolute climax of the housing boom. So to see our demand indicators back there, and yet our supply indicators are not back there, that causes some asymmetry in the marketplace.
So what's the difference then between, so go back to 06, because some agents would say, and some people out there would say, the buyer activity or the market is, like I meet someone at the store or something and say, what do you do? I'm in real estate. Oh, things must be great for you right now. I mean, that's the idea that everybody has.
Yep.
However, 06, I remember it seemed like there was a lot more supply to match the buyer demand. And it wasn't quite this 5 offers or 10 offers or all these offers having to lose out, because if you lost out, you could go to another one and you'd get it. Whereas right now, we're not having that, right? I mean,
yeah, we're not having that at all. So by the end of 06, we had 30,000 active listings.
Oh my!
Wow.
Wow.
30,000 homes on the market.
What are we at now? Like 10?
About 11.
11,000.
Yeah.
Wow,
We're at about
$11,200 swing.
Yeah, so that's a 60% plus, supply side correction. Except it's not a correction. It's not correct, because we have so much demand that we don't have the supply levels to kind of fuel or feed this demand.
Yeah.
And this is going to start to turn into a little bit of a crunch for us, and it already has. We already saw last month was one of the first months. So our April data, so here we are in May, our most recent data is for April. April 2017 data actually showed about a 7% decline in signed purchase agreements compared to April 2016.
Really?
And that was the first, I think that was the first decline over a couple percent in several years that we saw. And it's not that
because the buyers aren't ready to buy it.
you nailed
right?
it, Jason.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I was going to say. We're not seeing a failure in demand. Consumers are still excited. They're getting pre-approval letters from whether it's Wells or US or Quicken, it doesn't matter, or Rocket Mortgage. Lots of folks out there. It's probably good to use a brick and mortar bank, but lots of good ones out there. They got pre-approval letter showings, foot traffic. We're still seeing pretty high levels of foot traffic at open houses and at showings. So consumers aren't turned off. They're just a little bit frustrated by the lack of options, and they're feeling a little bit burned. And maybe burned out by making offers on 10 properties and losing every single one.
Right. We're always
multiples.
encouraging our borrowers. I mean, we check in with them every week.
Yep.
How's it going? They've got their pre-approvals. We're checking with the realtors, and it's the same thing. And they're feeling frustrated. Well, maybe I should wait. And that's why, too, we even talk about new construction. Like, sometimes I think now, especially with the warmer weather, we can get those new construction homes built faster. Because they're like, oh, I don't know if I do new construction. I don't want to have time, 9 months to wait. But that might be your only option, right?
Yeah, so this is a really good point. And it speaks to how do we claw our way out of this, I don't want to call it a crisis. How do we claw our way out of this sort of weird situation where we're kind of at this inflection point? Buyers are there, prices are rising, but sellers just don't feel incentivized. They don't feel motivated to put their homes on the market. And it's not that they don't have confidence that their homes will sell in record time.
Oh, they know it'll sell. They know they'll get a good price.
Where do they go?
Yeah.
Where am I going to go next? They
Yep.
can't find that dream home on the back end.
Yep.
And that's the struggle. And so it's preventing them from listing on the front end because, they're having the conversation, honey, maybe what we have ain't so bad. Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe we remodel. Maybe we do a bath or a kitchen or a master suite, whatever.
And stay there.
And
Here's
stay.
one, and now you just made me think of one thing, and maybe this is true or not, David. But my thought on that is that when you're a boomer or you're an aging adult and you've been in your home a long time, so you've been in it more than 7 years, let's say you've been in there 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, the thought and the process of you going on the market is different than possibly of someone who's 40 and has 3 kids in high school, and they're going to move to another city for work or for another house or whatever. Their thought process might be quicker. Your thought process might be a lot longer. I think there's this longer thought process on the sale because it's so emotional, but also where do you go? And then when you look at the cost for aging adults of where they have to go or the options that they have to go, the cost is scary enough that they maybe say, hey, guess what? This is paid off. We're paying taxes and insurance. Let's stay here and modify instead of paying that $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month when we go into another new apartment or a new home or anything like that. I think that might be part of it too, is
Definitely.
the demographics of the people that have the homes are older and they just aren't quick to put a sign up in the yard and say, here we go. Right?
It's exactly right. So I've read somewhere, I can't remember where, I wish I could quote this. I read that there's about 10,000 boomers that retire every day.
Really?
And there's this sort of movement, and there's a lot of literature around this, a lot of scholarly articles and whatnot.
We got 30 seconds left, so you can talk a little bit.
So they're saying that there's this movement toward aging in place. So instead of selling, if I'm 60, 70, I like my church, my synagogue, my mosque. I like my school. I like the restaurants. I like my neighbors.
So
I want to stay in my
place.
community.
Yep.
So it's this whole movement toward aging in place, and that's what we're seeing.
We'll talk more about that when we
yeah.
get back, folks. Stay tuned.
Don't know if I'm chasing